And the little agendas will need ultimately to be dropped off so that the fundamental humane acts of love that constitute being truly civilized are the alpha and omega of the action that's engaged in, without the private little leveraging agendas that get tacked onto it for personal gain or national gain and so on.
So it's first things first.
Yes, first thing you have to do is get their attention. The first thing I have to do is get your attention. And you're not an enemy. Until the attention is gotten, communication can't occur. And until communication can occur, resolution and healing cannot occur. And if the reason for communication is love, then the manner in which communication is engaged in will in all respects conform to the end goal, which is the mutual experience of love, friendship. And you know what? In order for that to happen, as you all know, each of you has to become defenseless so that you might be able to be genuine with each other, so that you can speak from your heart of hearts. And so that you might voice the discrepancies that you see, that you have been experiencing, not as a form of attack, but as a point for you, the two of you, to become mutually clearer about where there can be healing.
You surface the truth of the issues.
Indeed. But you know what the truth of the issue is? At the bottom line, everybody wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be able to feel love for everyone else. Everyone wants to feel safe in giving and receiving love and in being respected. That's it at the bottom line. And if you're all the direct expression of God, and therefore the Christ, plain, pure, and simple, then you are all worthy of respect and love and kindness and nothing less. There is a United States in order for there to be a united world that even goes beyond the meaning of United States. Everyone is going to have to desire for there to be peace, and desire it enough to behave in a way that inspires others to let down their defenses, in order to find that in the absence of their defenses, they don't get attacked, and that they are safe. And when the desire that all of you embody for your brothers globally to feel safe and where there can be open communion, one with another around the globe, when that desire becomes undivided, that's when it happens. That's when it's done. That's when the first domino falls. And the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and on and on. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, over these last 3 weeks, we've been working really hard to pin you down.
Working really hard?
To pin you down on the issues that are facing us. You have told us several times that Hitler is now awake.
Indeed.
When Hitler was embodied, he was responsible for an awful lot of inhumanity.
Not all by himself.
No, not all by himself, but as a symbol, he represents and was the leader, at least of the fascist movement. And at the time, the free world said, no, we're not going to have this. And the free world said no with such ferocity that it went down in history as World War II. And many people died during this war, and there were many atrocities during this war. Did the ferocity of the free world, saying no, did that play a role in Hitler's awakening? And was it the most healing thing for the world to do at the time under those circumstances?
It's a dangerous question you ask. It played a role in his awakening only in the sense that the Holy Spirit can use every event on behalf of the one waking up. But let's not think that the world, or the United States and a few allies, saying an unequivocal no to Saddam Hussein will have the beneficent effect of promoting his awakening, and therefore perhaps further justify saying no vehemently. You know what I do want you to, I want everyone who hears what I'm saying to know? Many are surprised that Hitler is awake after such a short passage of time since the atrocities he engaged in. It's possible for Saddam Hussein to wake up tomorrow. And not some years after his death. It's possible for each one of you to wake up tomorrow. Keep that in mind because it keeps perspective. Because at the same time you say no with physical force, you will know and you will be open to the possibility of a sudden shift of perception, a spontaneous, sudden shift of perception on his part. And there is a need for a sudden shift of perception on his part. The ferocity of the no that you spoke of in World War II was an example of, we will say, relatively speaking, a global desire that came close to a point of being undivided. And when a desire for that which represents truth and God and life becomes undivided, as I said, the desire becomes fulfilled spontaneously, which is another reason that I have been addressing everyone's willingness, or the need for everyone to be willing to become involved to the point of saying no where no needs to be said, and yes where yes needs to be said. So that whether you join the infantry and go to the front, or whether you're at home, your unprivate thoughts, your unprivate commitment, because there are no private thoughts, do join on behalf of healing. Again, not punishment, healing. And you know what? The potential for redemption. If someone has a highly communicable disease, you quarantine him. Why? Well, because at the bottom line, you're unaware of your invulnerability as a child of God. If you knew that you could not be subject to something that God didn't create, you would not quarantine the person with this disease. That wouldn't correct the problem, but it would determine how you behaved relative to him. As long as you don't know how to be in the presence of the communicable disease without catching it, you quarantine him or her. And then you take steps to heal. So, is this making sense? You do what you have to do under the circumstances at your present point of growth, your present point of awakening, while at the same time turning toward the altar to be open to even clearer views of reality as God is being it, so that that might become embodied in the gift of love that constitutes the act of love that is the atonement. So right now, everyone is engaged in acts of confinement of a problem that are in many ways gross, not very spiritual, because you don't yet have the spiritual means to do it otherwise. So you do it the way you have to do it, while at the same time remembering what I brought out at the beginning this evening, that correction means healing, not punishment, so that you might not forget that your focus of attention needs to be on healing, transformation, regeneration, redemption. If healing is the goal, then every aspect of the means of arriving at the healing will reflect and embody that goal.
Even war. If it has to come to that, if you hold the idea that the intent is for healing and transformation, not for punishment.
Even the forceful confinement or restraining of a continuing intent to bring harm. Yes.
Okay.
If you wish to call that war, you may.
I'm trying to be very clear on supporting what needs to be done with the right attitude.
What I want to point out is that the more individuals on your globe who will become involved and take a stand, yes or no, yes for that which reflects and identifies God, and no to that which does not, the more on your globe who would take a position, cast their vote, the less and less likely it would be that a single missile would be fired or shot would be fired. But if that kind of resolve cannot be arrived at in the mind of mankind, then absolutely missiles will have to be launched, bullets will have to be fired, and the confinement will have to be accomplished. You cannot look at something that does not reflect God and is aggressively opposite to love and say, I will not say no to this until I can do it from a supreme level of divine spirituality. You've got to say no in whatever way works.
I think you've really cleared up a lot of confusion around this evening, and I thank you, at least for myself.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm not quite at peace with this because I notice that whatever goes on the big scene usually does show up personally. And I certainly have been met with the last few months, year or so, with an ongoing message that certainly I felt was broadcast as a dinner bell before, let's say, the pending threat of war has shown up. And that message, which I can't say that I've gotten a handle on or have healed, is this: that our main enslavement or preoccupation is with two things, and this is what my guide said, that keeps us in a box, each one of us in the box. And those two messages, or the temptation around mutual agreements, are righteousness and personal power. And I feel if I had healed that within the point of my awareness, I may not be seeing on the world stage what I see today. And even so, I'm keen to it. And any time when the air of, let's say, where my interest is drawn to what is right or righteousness, everyone on the war scene feels like they're a good guy in a bad world. And that to me still stands as the dilemma, and I'm sure that's why we have this whole book and the time to work out this dilemma of how, at least I am still working on, how do I talk away, argue away in my own awareness the issue of righteousness, and out of the valuing of righteousness, that I would attempt to exercise personal power. That to me has been where I've been working within, behind the scenes, to reckon with those two issues, as I feel is the basis of the correction. So I'll be quiet.
I can answer this relatively briefly. Righteousness and personal power are selfish. They're always with the focus on the self feeling righteous, the self wanting personal power. It is, very simply, the nature of the ego, which is incapable of extension, which is incapable of embrace, which is incapable of putting another's interest before its own. Don't you find it interesting that the atonement is an act of love and not something else? It's the specific thing that breaks the dream. It's the specific thing that undoes the illusions. Because an act of love is not selfish. It doesn't relate to oneself. It requires involvement or joining. And more than the joining that happens between one person and another, it's the primary joining that one has to engage in with the Father in order to be infilled with what love really is and the inspiration of it that causes it to spontaneously bubble forth and embrace another, thus breaking the isolation. Again, that's the point of what I wanted to convey tonight. Correction means healing, not punishment. Where correction is needed. And it involves each one's willingness to provide the correction where it's needed. Not with any sense of righteousness. Not with any sense of personal power. But as a communication of benignness and friendship. And you know what? Every single country in this world has friends that it needs to reestablish its friendships with. You get that? Not enemies that they have to establish friendships with, but old friends, forever friends, that they have forgotten their friendship with and need to reestablish those friendships that could never actually end. And that's it in a nutshell. And just to be utterly clear, if one of the friends, by virtue of both friends forgetting that they were friends, has become so frightened that there is low trust, and that one continues to be unfriendly when overtures of friendliness are extended, the one who has become clear enough to care to extend friendship once again must refrain from becoming reactive to the lack of trust and persist in extending friendship apparently over time, over a period of time, with persistence, so that, for lack of better words, a history of friendship and benignness has been embodied, acted out in the world. And do this for however long it takes for the more frightened friend to lay down his fear. And that must be the goal. If the frightened friend is inclined to express his fear in harmful acts, steps must be taken to keep those harmful acts from becoming actualized. Why? So that harm does not occur to either one while the reestablishing of an ancient friendship occurs. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
The next section, which we will begin on next week, is called The Meaning of the Last Judgment. Good timing. I love you. Two things. I know this sounds trite. Love one another as I have loved you. Second thing, I encourage all of you to revisit last week's gathering, because in it you will find that I described exactly how to deal with Saddam Hussein. And I did it by describing at some length how I deal with you. Okay. I look forward to being with you next week.